We've known for over a year now that big tech has been actively censoring Americans who spoke out against orthodoxy when it came to COVID-19 and vaccines. But today we're getting new information showing that the Centers for Disease Control actually worked hand in hand with big tech companies to squash dissent on their platforms. Litigation counsel for the new Civil Liberties Alliance, Janine Eunice, has been on the front line exposing the lies of pandemic orthodoxy, and she joins me now. Janine, thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
So this is interesting because people will have been thinking this was going on for some time. Here's the Washington Free Beacon reporting on it. Over the course of at least 6 months, starting in December 2020, CDC officials regularly communicated with personnel at Twitter, Facebook, and Google over vaccine misinformation. At various times, CDC officials would flag specific posts by users on social media platforms such as Twitter as example posts to censor. Is this, I mean, we often talk about the First Amendment, Janine, and people will say, well, if it's not the government, they can do whatever they want. Is the government allowed to tell companies, you got to shut those guys down?
No, the government isn't, and that's sort of the big struggle that's going on here. So I actually had a case, and there were a couple of other people had cases, Justin Hart and the Children's Health Defense, that were dismissed because the judge said that you can't show that the government is driving this censorship. For all you know, these companies might have done it on their own. And sure, the government has made these statements because as beginning in about April or May of 2021, various officials within the Biden administration were saying things like, if big tech doesn't do more to censor COVID misinformation, then we might impose regulatory or other legal consequences. So it was our contention that those threats were enough to show that the government was coercing the tech companies, and that's a First Amendment violation. But these emails, and there was also a revelation in June where it became clear that there's this disinformation governance board within DHS that was similar. It's orchestrating, it's using these tech companies to direct censorship of Americans, and that is unlawful, and courts should start finding it unlawful.
I mean, you had a quote from an article in the Tablet where you wrote that the natural tendency of censorship is to lock in an ever narrower and more counterproductive echo chamber. It has been shocking to a lot of people, I think, to see just how rigid and unconcerned with correcting things they've been all along here, especially when it comes to COVID orthodoxy and what's allowed, what's not allowed. I mean, still to this day, social media platforms they put this COVID warning on the bottom of anything that is not sort of COVID approved. And now it seems that there was at least implicit, if not explicit, government demands for this behind the scenes.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what these emails show even more. Another thing that was in the emails that I found rather shocking is that the CDC accepted a $15 million quote unquote gift of ad space from Facebook so that the government could run its messages on Facebook. While at the same time, the CDC is the branch of the government that's doing this. They're also suppressing the views of Americans that they don't agree with through using tech companies. So they're really tilting the scale in their own favor, where only the government's message is heard, or the government's message is heard much more. And as you know, another component of this that I think is really important is that the government has gotten so many things wrong, and things that were misinformation yesterday, like masks don't really do very much to stem the spread of COVID. The vaccines don't seem to be very good at stopping transmission. Well, now we know they're true. And that sort of exemplifies why we have a First Amendment. The framers of the Constitution recognized that it's important to have dissent, that sometimes the majority voice is wrong, and that often government is wrong.